Hello there. Good day to you, all of you wonderful, lovely people. My voice looks like it's a bit out of sync in this recording. I'm going to try and go photo. Video doesn't make me look as good though. Not very good in video at all. See, it's all zoomed in. I don't know how to zoom it out. I'm too stupid. They bought a real coffee machine at the shops the other day on this ward in Nash Ward. So that was nice. Just drinking some of that now. It's kind of half cold, but yeah, got some more ridiculous sunglasses. Yeah, they're just eating dinner, pasta with mince. Everyone's looking quite happy about it. Not that there's very many people here anymore. I'm going to completely scramble your neurons today by talking about platonic solids, which you've probably heard of, and Archimedean solids, which you might not have done, maybe, and the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, which are, if anything like the woke liberal left elite who have the fucking ambiguity, the pomposity to walk around calling people sheeple while they revel in their fucking insubordinate disinformation and fucking counterintelligence horse dribble. I'm not right wing, by the way. You know, maybe somebody said, you know, what would you say if I said to you that the right wing and the left wing were both wings of the same bird? Ooh, we never thought about that one, but you did. You know, I read it on the internet. I thought about it. You know, what I'm saying is, don't know. I just move my hat to make my sort of. I've got male pattern boulders. See, look, that's why I wear a hat. It looks terrible. Look at that fringe. Look at that for a fringe. Imagine that. Fucking diabolical. I woke up in a really stinking mood today. Really fucking angry this morning. I just, yeah, I'm scared I'm taking these lamotrigine mood stabilisers, so they'll help me out. But sometimes just being a poorly run institution, whoa, doo-doo. Yeah, just fucking does red at night. It really does. Portrait mode is quite good. Put it into like two man deep. There you go. And now it's all blurry in the background now. That's good. It's not green screen. Look, okay, I'll move the curtains. You can just tell if it's green screen. Tell them I'm not really here. Look, there you go. I'll close my curtains completely, and we'll have a much better. One of the fucking clips has come off. I sat on it when it was on the bed. Anyway, all you lovely people, gonna have a bit more coffee. What I've done with my vape, I don't know what I've done with my vape. What have I done with my vape? What have I done with my vape? What have I done with it? What have I done with it? What's it? There it is. Fucking hell. Worried for a bit then. Right. Going to read you the research now. I haven't read it yet, so anything that contradicts or contravenes, I still thought doing its fucking thing, innit? How am I supposed to know that? Analysing results. Right, well, I won't look at those two Instagram posts at the top. What I'll do is I'll just, I'll just make myself small. Small in the head, big in the game. And can I make myself bigger? Can you make it bigger by like tapping it? I think you can. I don't know. What's that arrow for? Don't press it. In case it says something dodgy. Well, analysing results. This is like going to be a really boring video. We're already 4 minutes in now, and all there is just me talking shit. I'm going to pause recording. I'm going to pause the recording until the report's finished, because otherwise you'll be too bored, right? 2 minutes. Yo, that was quick, wasn't it? Like some time travel vibe shit. Anyway, here's that. March the 5th, 5:14 p.m. Hopefully they won't interrupt me to do my meds, but like they might do. It's the research, though. I'll read it to you, like I always do. You can trust me to do that. The sacred and the geometric, an exhaustive analysis of Platonic and Archimedean solids and their esoteric significance in the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. If you don't know what the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry is, then Google it and if you don't know what esoteric means, then you probably shouldn't be watching this video. And Archimedes was a bit of a dude. Plato is also a bit of a dude. I've got some lukewarm coffee here. Tepid coffee, my favourite, but it is Lavazza, which makes all the difference, really. Anyway, introduction to geometrical cosmos. I can't speak right there because I'm on clonazepam and I've lost half a tooth. I need to have a dentist appointment very soon. Yeah, since the earliest epochs of human intellectual and spiritual inquiry, geometry has functioned as the fundamental language through which the structural order of the universe is deciphered, interpreted, and venerated. From the megalithic architectural marvels of antiquity to the highly abstract realms of modern theoretical physics, a rigorous study of spatial relationships, symmetries, and multidimensional polyhedral forms has provided an unbroken thread connecting the physical, observable sciences with the deepest depths of metaphysical philosophy. At the absolute apex of this geometric hierarchy reside two distinct, mathematically rigorous but deeply interrelated families of three-dimensional shapes. The Platonic solids, the Archimedean solids. I will apologise in advance for my poor dictation today. Yeah, this stuff clonazepam and having a razor sharp tooth is really doing my fucking Sweden. These intricate polyhedra, not merely mathematical curiosities or abstract spatial puzzles, they are foundational cognitive and structural archetypes that have captivated the minds of mathematicians, philosophers, the mystics for millennia. Ancient Greeks, most notably the schools of Pythagoras, Plato and Archimedes, identified these specific geometric shapes as the ultimate optimal expressions of spatial symmetry and divine proportion. Later, during the explosive intellectual rebirth of the Renaissance, monumental figures like Leonardo da Vinci, Luca Pacioli, and Johann Kepler resurrected these ancient forms to explain the harmonic proportions of fine art, the biological structures of the natural world, and the precise orbital mechanics of the celestial spheres. However, beyond the rigid realm of pure academic mathematics and theoretical astrophysics, these geometric solids have been meticulously preserved, fiercely guarded, deeply venerated within Western esoteric and initiatory traditions, most prominently from the symbolic bedrock of Freemasonry, and specifically the highly philosophical system of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, Arsel. Sounds like arsehole, but it's not. It's AASSR, Arsel. Arsel. Within this complex initiatory framework, geometry is revered not merely as a practical utilitarian tool historically used by operative stonemasons, but as a profound overarching allegorical framework designed for spiritual, ethical and cognitive development. Now, the physical transformation and manipulation of geometric forms serves as a direct mirror for the internal moral transformation of the human soul, mapping a lifelong trajectory from chaotic, unhewn ignorance into a state of harmonious and enlightened perfection. This comprehensive research report will rigorously examine the defining mathematical properties, the structural commonalities, and the critical divergences of the Platonic and Archimedean solids. It will provide highly accessible conceptual metaphors to illuminate their complex spatial relationships and visual structures for the reader. Furthermore, it will conduct an exhaustive, detailed exploration of how these geometric archetypes are encoded, utilised, and revered within the ritual, symbols, and the underlying philosophy of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Particular analytical focus will be directed towards the profound multi-dimensional geometric architecture of the 32nd degree, known as the Sublime Prince of the Royal Secret, wherein the geometric relationships of these polyhedra map the ultimate destiny of human society. Well, there you are. The historical evolution of sacred polyhedra. To fully comprehend the immense philosophical weight and esoteric significance of these specific geometric shapes, one must first trace their historical lineage, understanding how they transitioned from physical objects of antiquity to abstract models of the cosmos. Antiquity and the Dawn of Spatial Reasoning is the first paragraph title. The human fascination with regular polyhedra predates recorded mathematical theory. Bizarre. Archaeological excavations in Scotland have unearthed hundreds of carved stone balls created by the late Neolithic peoples. While many of these stones feature rounded knobs rather than perfectly flat polyhedral faces, a significant number of them display symmetries that closely approximate the vertices of the Platonic solid, suggesting that ancient humanity possessed an intuitive physical grasp. It might not have been intuitive, it might have been prescriptive, but a grasp of these fundamental geometric symmetries long before the Greeks formalised them into axioms. Google axioms till your heart's content. The formal, rigorous codification of these shapes, however, is universally attributed to the ancient Greeks. Pythagoreans, operating in the 6th century BCE, are credited with discovering, or at least deeply investigating, the properties of several of the regular solids. For Pythagoras and his disciples, mathematics was not a secular discipline, but a highly guarded religion. Numbers and geometries were viewed as living entities and the fundamental constituents of reality. This concept was subsequently immortalised by the Athenian philosopher Plato. He lived from 428 to 348, not a bad run. Pretty good innings there. In his seminal cosmological dialogue, the Timaeus, Plato hypothesised that the physical universe was constructed from 5 fundamental invisible building blocks. He elegantly mapped the 5 regular convex polyhedra to the classical elements of the ancient world. Because these shapes were the only perfectly symmetrical solids possible, Plato reasoned they must form from the atomic structure of the cosmos. From that point forward, these 5 shapes became permanently known as Platonic solids. Following Plato, the brilliant mathematician and engineer Archimedes of Syracuse expanded the boundaries of solid geometry. Now, recognising the strict limitations of the 5 Platonic solids, Archimedes discovered a secondary family of 13 highly symmetric, semi-regular polyhedra. Archimedes extensively documented these shapes, but in his original manuscript detailing their construction was tragically lost to history. The existence of these 13 shapes survived the destruction of the ancient world only through secondary references, most notably in the mathematical commentaries of Pappus of Alexandria, written centuries afterwards. The Renaissance and the resurgence of sacred geometry. The mathematical and philosophical legacy of the Platonic and Archimedean solids lay largely dormant during the Middle Ages, preserved only in fragmented Arabic translations and obscure monastic manuscripts. However, the European Renaissance sparked a massive resurgence of interest in classical geometry, driven by the rediscovery of ancient texts and the desire of artists and architects to understand divine proportions of nature. In 1509, quite a while ago, the Italian mathematician I've never heard of, Fra Luca Pacioli, published De Divina Proportione, Divine Proportion, a masterful treatise exploring the mathematics of the golden ratio and regular polyhedra. This text was formerly a bit geeky today. This text was famously illustrated by none other than Leonardo da Vinci, who produced over 60 incredibly precise skeletal drawings of the Platonic and Archimedean solids, elevating these shapes to the level of high art and solidifying their association with hidden divine architecture in the world. A century later, brilliant German astronomer and mathematician Hans Kepler, we all know him, took the, I'm not mates with him, but you know what I mean, took the philosophical study of these solids to its absolute zenith. Google that as well. In his early work, Mysterium Cosmographicum, 1596, but that's a hard read, Kepler proposed a revolutionary model of the solar system. He observed that there were exactly 6 known planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, and exactly 5 Platonic solids. So Kepler hypothesized that the invisible orbital distances between the planets were perfectly dictated by nested Platonic solids encased within invisible spheres. For example, the orbit of Saturn was a sphere, inscribed within it was a cube. Inscribed within the cube was the sphere of Jupiter's orbit. Inscribed within that was a tetrahedron, and so on. While Kepler's geometric model of the solar system was eventually proven physically incorrect by his own subsequent discoveries of elliptical orbits, in brackets, his famous 3 laws of planetary motion, his profound dedication to regular solids led him to independently reconstruct the entire lost set of the 13 Archimedean solids in his later masterwork, Harmonious mundi, harmonies of the world. In 1619, it's from Kepler that we derive the modern Latin names used to classify the Archimedean family today. Mathematical architecture of the Platonic solids. So to truly comprehend the philosophical, esoteric and Masonic way of these shapes, one must first master their strict mathematical definitions. In the discipline of solid geometry, a polyhedron is defined as a three-dimensional solid consisting of a collection of perfectly flat polygonal faces, straight line segments called edges where the faces meet, and vertices, or corners as we might call them, where multiple edges intersect. You might have gone to the pub and had a corner off a card off someone once. I certainly have. Tend to do a lot more of it too. The defining characteristic of both the Platonic and Archimedean families is convexity, meaning that all interior angles are less than 180, and a line drawn between any 2 points on the surface of the shape will pass entirely through the interior of the solid. There are no indentations, star-like points, or self-intersecting planes. Both families of solids also obey Leonhard Euler, as in, famous characteristic formula for convex polyhedra expressed mathematically as this dog shit thing here. Wait, I think someone's about to knock on my door. Are they about to knock on the door? It's just still doing obs. Yeah. So now there's a fucking equation. I'm not going to tell you what that means. V, it will say V is vertex, right? E represents edges, and F represents the total number of faces, right? So this means nothing to you at this point, but the topological invariant mathematically proves that regardless of how complex the multifaceted exterior of the solid becomes, these structures share a fundamental underlying spatial logic. Topologically, they are all equivalent to a simple unbroken sphere that's been mapped into a distinct flat and angular facet, the monotony of absolute perfection. The Platonic solid is defined by its uncompromising, rigorous standard of geometric purity. It's a regular convex polyhedron that satisfies two absolute rules. The first one, right, is face transitivity. All of the faces making up the solid must be congruent, and that means perfectly identical in size and shape. Regular polygons, for example, all the perfect equilateral triangles, or maybe all perfect squares. Vertex transitivity, right? So this exact same number of faces must meet at every single vertex, and they must meet at the exact same solid angle. And this requirement of dual transitivity is so mathematically restrictive that only 5 such solids can possibly exist in 3-dimensional, that's what I was going to say, Euclidean space. That's that dude up there. This is not theory, it's a proven mathematical absolute. Mental. The classical restriction of the Platonic solids can be proven by analysing the concept of the angle defect as a vertex. For a convex solid to successfully fold and enclose a 3-dimensional space, the sum of the interior angles of the flat polygons meeting at a single vertex must be strictly less than 360 right degrees. So the sum equals exactly 3. If the sum equals exactly 360, the shapes will simply flatten out into an infinite 2-dimensional plane, a tessellation like hexagonal floor tiles. Because regular polygons have specific fixed interior angles, that's an equilateral triangle is like 60 degrees, a square is 90. I'd make a terrible maths teacher, wouldn't I? A regular pentagon would be 108 degrees, regular hexagon is 120. The possible permutations to form a 3D corner are finite. So with triangles, you can bring 3 triangles together at a point 180 degrees, creating a tetrahedron, 4 triangles at 240 degrees, creating an octahedron, or 5 triangles at 300 degrees, creating an isosahedron, but you cannot bring 6 triangles. I've got some Doritos over there, actually. Lovely they are. Triangles together, because 6 times 60 degrees equals 360, which creates a flat plane. Squares, 90 degrees. You can bring these squares together at a point 270 degrees, creating a cube. 4 squares equal to 360, which is flat. Polygons, 108 degrees. You can bring 3 pentagons together to point at a point 324 degrees, creating a dodecahedron. Hexagons 120 degrees. If you try to bring even the minimum of 3 hexagons together, the sum is 360. It is impossible to build a purely regular convex 3D solid out of hexagons or any polygon with more sides, which is interesting. Well, it's not really. I mean, that's fucking boring, isn't it? Really, I'm definitely not going to read this. Therefore, geometry dictates that exactly 5, only 5 platonic solids can exist. They're detailed exhaustively below. Right, almost got someone else's voice in there then. Geometry dictates that exactly 5 and only 5 platonic solids can exist, and they're detailed exhaustively below. Tetrahedron, hexahedron, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron. Equilateral triangle, regular pentagon. That's how many faces: 4, 6, 8, 12, 20. They might mean something, but you have to find that out one day in the future. Edges and the vertices, and the vertex configuration, classical element, Plato, and that fucking ether, whatever. Don't do ether. You'll end up on fear and loathing. Deep properties of the platonic solids. Beyond their simple face counts, the platonic solids possess a highly elegant property known in mathematics as duality. Every platonic solid has a dual solid, which is created by connecting the center points of all its faces. So if one connects the center of 6 faces of a cube, it creates an 8-sided octahedron. If one connects the centers of the 8 faces of an octahedron, it perfectly recreates a 6-sided cube. Thus, the cube and octahedron are duals. Similarly, the 12-faced dodecahedron and the 20-faced icosahedron are perfect duals of one another. The tetrahedron is utterly unique. It has 4 faces and 4 vertices. Connecting its face centers creates another smaller tetrahedron facing the opposite direction. It's mathematically self-dual, creating an infinite fractal capability. That's like the Mandelbrot set, something else completely. I'm never going to do a video on that, so don't worry about it. In modern mathematics, these shapes are rigorously characterized by their, I don't know what that means, symbol, which denotes a regular polyhedron with p-gonal faces, where q faces meet at each vertex. If you're finding this really boring, like just pause it for a bit, maybe sort of drink some coffee or like masturbate or eat some spicy food, or just a pint of water might do fine. But let's trudge through. So shall we? The 5 pairs of something, tetrahedron, cube, blah blah blah. These solids also possess maximal symmetry, meaning they have inscribed, misdescribed, and circumscribed spheres that perfectly touch face centers, edge centers, and vertices respectively. So the mathematical architecture of the Archimedean solids. If the platonic solids represent absolute unyielding monolithic uniformity, the Archimedean solids represent a highly complex harmonious integration of diversity. The Archimedean solid is defined as a highly symmetric, semi-regular convex polyhedron composed of 2 or more different types of regular polygons, while the platonic solids forcefully restrict themselves to a single repeating shape, only utilizing triangles. The Archimedean solids allow for a pluralistic blend, so you can put triangles in there, squares in there, hexagons, all peacefully coexisting on the surface of the exact same solid. So however, there are massive mathematical constraints that prevent these shapes from just sort of devolving into chaotic random jumbles of polygons that are just weird, like chemical structures or whatever. The defining rule of Archimedean solids is that the arrangement of polygons around every single vertex must be completely identical throughout the entire solid. Read that again if you've got to, pause it. In mathematical terminology, they're called vertex transitive, but not face transitive. So if one were to place a microscopic observer on any corner of an Archimedean solid, the view of the surrounding shapes would be entirely indistinguishable from the view at the corner of any other shape. There are exactly 13 Archimedean solids. Some modern geometers consider there to be 15 if one counts the left-handed and right-handed chiral variations of the snub solids as distinct entities, but traditionally they're classified as having 13. The little bird on the American note's got 13 arrows in his hand. Generation of Archimedean solids is most frequently accomplished through sophisticated spatial operations performed directly upon the 5 platonic solids. These operations include truncation, the process of taking a sharp blade, slicing off the vertices or corners of a solid at a specific uniform depth, which creates a new face where the point used to be and alters the shape of the original face. It sounds like some horrible acid trip horror story to me. Rectification, not much nicer, a deeper form of truncation where the vertices are sliced off exactly down to the midpoints of the original edges. Expansion, which is cantillation, the process of pulling the faces of a regular solid outwards and apart from the centre and filling the resulting empty spaces with new shapes, usually squares. Snubbing, a highly complex operation that involves alternatively pulling faces apart, giving them a slight rotational twist and filling the resulting gaps with bands of equilateral triangles. I'm not going to pull anyone's face apart. Certainly won't put any equilateral triangles. Well, I'm going to have to get my Doritos before this video is over, I think. It's already 25 minutes, fucking hell. The complete catalogue of the 13 Archimedean solids, along with their staggering phase counts and vertex configurations are below. So truncated, just look at it, just do the same prompt. I'll show you the prompt at the end. I hate tables. I just hate reading, because it's really difficult when you're trying to do it. Unless you can see the whole fucking thing, which you can't when you're on the phone. It's just you just get lost in oblivion. Right, the jewels of Archimedean solids. This is quite a good bit. So just as the Platonic solids have jewels, the Archimedean solids also possess a set of dual polyhedra known to mathematicians as the Catalan solids. So because Archimedean solids are vertex transitive, but not face transitive, so they're like vertices and vertexes, those bits. Faces are like the flat bits, yeah. Their Catalan jewels are the exact opposite. They're completely face transitive, but they're not vertex transitive. Different numbers of faces meet at different corners. A prime example is the rhombic dodecahedron, a beautiful 12-sided crystal made entirely of diamond-shaped rhombuses, which is the perfect jewel of the Archimedean cube octahedron. So commonalities, divergences and visual metaphors. To truly grasp the profound relationship between these two families of solids and why they're so heavily utilised in esoteric philosophy, one must synthesise their rigid mathematical definitions into highly accessible conceptual frameworks and metaphors. So here's some structural commonalities, right? Both the Platonic and Archimedean families inhabit exactly the same sphere of three-dimensional Euclidean geometry. They're both rigorously defined by strict convexivity, perfectly straight edges, and the absolute requirement that every face must be a regular polygon, meaning all sides and interior angles of a given face are perfectly equal. Polygons are all equal angles, right? Most importantly, both families share the incredibly rare trait of being vertex transitive. Now, as previously established, this means that every single corner of the solid is structurally identical to every other corner. So due to this supreme symmetry, both families represent the most optimal spatial solutions for enclosing three-dimensional volume with uniform boundaries. Now, this is not merely an abstract mathematical concept, it's the fundamental blueprint of the physical universe. So when scientists study the densest possible packing of atomic particles, the formation of crystal lattices and the microscopic structure of metallic alloys like face centers, cubic structures, or the energy mimicking spherical shells of microscopic organisms like Radiolaria, the architecture they repeatedly discover perfectly mirrors the geometry of the Platonic and Archimedean solids. They are the universe's ultimate method of achieving tensegrity, structural equilibrium where pushing and pulling forces are perfectly symmetrically balanced across a three-dimensional web. That's something called the vector equilibrium, which I've missed out. It might bring it into this. So critical divergences. This singular defining divergence between the two families lies in the variety of the faces. A Platonic solid, highly restricted, allowing only a single monolithic shape to repeat infinitely across the entire surface. It's mathematically pure, but as a consequence, it's structurally limited to only 5 iterations. The Archimedean solid boldly breaks this monolithic perfection, utilising 2 or 3 different regular polygons to build its surface. So because they utilise multiple shapes, Archimedean solids possess a significantly higher number of faces and vertices than their Platonic parents. This mathematical reality grants the Archimedean solid a much higher degree of sphericity. That's a good word. I've got a bit of that, my big belly. While a Platonic tetrahedron or cube has sharp, aggressive points, a bit like my broken tooth, that protrude far from the surface of an inscribed sphere, shapes like the Archimedean snub dodecahedron with its 92 faces closely approximate the smooth, unbroken curve of a perfect globe. Metaphors for easy comprehension. Now, to make these highly abstract geometric relationships easier to visualize and comprehend without relying entirely on complex mathematics, the analysis relies on three distinct intuitive metaphors. The master sculptor's metaphor, which is the mechanism of truncation. Imagine a master stonemason. Here we're getting deep now. Get your goggles out. Working with a flawless block of marble. The mason carves marble into a perfect sharp-cornered cube, a Platonic solid. The cube has 6 identical square faces representing total uniformity. Now, the mason takes a fine chisel and precisely strikes off all 8 sharp corners of the cube. By removing the points, the mason creates 8 new small triangular flat faces where the sharp corners used to be. The original 6 squares have had their corners clipped, so they now become 8-sided octagons. The mason has just transformed a rigid Platonic solid, the cube, into a multifaceted Archimedean solid, the truncated cube. If the mason slices the corners even deeper until the cuts meet precisely at the exact midpoints of the original edges, the shape transforms again. If you can't imagine any of this happening in your brain, then you have my pity, because I certainly fucking can't. The original squares shrink, but they still remain squares, you see, and the corners become massive triangles. So the resulting shape is a cube octahedron, which is a sublime blend of 8 triangles and 6 squares. So thus the Archimedean solids can be intuitively understood, starting to get somewhere near the truth here, as the complex offspring born of surgical pruning or truncation of pure Platonic parents. So the Pythagorean musical metaphor, here we go. Monophony versus polyphony. So in classical Pythagorean thought, geometry, music were intrinsically linked through the quadrivium. A Platonic solid is akin to a single, beautifully sustained musical note, a pure, resonant, flawless frequency played in absolute isolation. It's perfect, but it lacks variation and complexity. An Archimedean solid, by contrast, is a musical chord. It brings 2 or 3 different notes, polygons, together and plays them simultaneously. Because the shape is vertex transitive, the chord sounds perfectly harmonious, mathematically balanced from every possible angle, creating a rich, vibrant symphony of physical structure that the single note could never achieve alone. The soccer ball metaphor, the truncated icosahedron. The most universally recognised modern metaphor for an Archimedean solid is the standard soccer ball. I hate football. If you know me about that, you'll know that for sure. If one closely examines the stitching on a traditional soccer ball, they will see that it's not made of just one repeating shape. It's constructed from a mathematically precise pattern of 20 white hexagons and 12 black pentagons. This specific configuration ensures that exactly 1 pentagon and 2 hexagons meet at every single corner across the entire surface of the ball. This iconic shape is the truncated icosahedron, an Archimedean solid, and it's a football. It's created by taking a Platonic icosahedron made up of 20 sharp triangles and slicing off its 12 points to create flat pentagons. The result is a polyhedral structure so stable and with such a high degree of sphericity that it can be inflated with air, kicked violently across the field, and never lose its geometric integrity. Bet you didn't know that. This exact same shape was famously discovered in chemistry as the stable carbon-60 molecule, which is known as the Buckminster fullerene or buckyball. The metaphysical framework of sacred geometry. To understand why these specific geometric shapes hold such profound contextual relevance within the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, one must first explore the broader intellectual spiritual tradition known as sacred geometry. Historically, for the ancients, geometry was not merely a utilitarian study of measuring land or designing buildings. It was considered the literal study of the divine mind. Now, ancient traditions extending from Egyptian mystery schools that built the pyramids to the Pythagorean academies of Greece posited a radical idea. Great architect of the universe utilized precise geometry, mathematics as the foundational blueprint for all creation. Within this esoteric paradigm, mathematical ratios such as phi and the golden ratio, harmonics and geometric perfection are viewed as the physical fingerprints of God, revealing the hidden timeless and universal order that is generally obscured from raw human sensory perception. The 5 Platonic solids in particular are the most heavily saturated with spiritual meaning. Plato's association of the solids with the fundamental states of matter cemented their role as the physical manifestations of metaphysical forces. Tetrahedron was fire, so it represented plasma, heat, upward mobility, spiritual purification, willpower, and the spark of creation due to its sharp, penetrating points. But not my broken tooth. Ow, it really hurts. Hexahedron cube, Earth, represents solid matter, physical reality, immovability, permanence, strict logic, and the foundation upon which all other things are built. Octahedron, air, represents gas, intellect, breath, harmony, and the delicate balance between multiple opposing forces. And icosahedron, water, represents liquids, emotional depth, intuition, fluidity, and flow, mimicking a droplet of water with its 20 highly spherical faces. Dodecahedron, the best one, is just the universe itself. Ether represents the divine void, the life force, prana, and the overarching framework of the cosmos itself, famously associated with the 12 signs of the zodiac. Whoa. Just having a conspiracy-gasm there. In the realm of sacred geometry, the mathematical transition from the abstract monolithic perfection of Platonic solids to the highly complex, multifaceted and interactive networks of the Archimedean solids models the philosophical journey of creation itself. It represents the emanation of energy from a singular divine source, Platonic, descending down into the pluralistic, diverse, and material reality of the everyday world, Archimedean. The Archimedean solids, being far from numerous and complex, represent the endless combinatorial, that's a good word. Now, I like these some good words here. Possibilities of human life, while still being strictly governed by the unifying rational laws of the Platonic ideals from which they were originally derived. I'm going to smoke some vape before I read this next page. Right, so foundational Masonic geometry from the Blue Lodge to the Royal Arch. Freemasonry, tracing its allegorical roots to the operative stonemasons, architects and builders of the Middle Ages, places an unparalleled and heavy emphasis on the spiritual application of architectural tools and geometric principles. In the symbolic Blue Lodge, the first 3 foundations of degrees of entered apprentice, fellow craft and master mason, geometry is not merely a subject of study, it's explicitly revered in the rituals as the first and noblest sciences, and the very basis upon which the entire superstructure of the whole fraternity is erected. You might not have had a Masonic erection, I never have, but they do apparently, every week. Centrality of the letter G and the Ashtar metaphor. So the most ubiquitous symbol in all of Freemasonry is the square and compasses, tools designed explicitly for geometric drafting. Suspended perfectly between these two implements is the iconic letter G. While it stands for God, or the great architect, no one actually knows what it stands for. Masonic ritual explicitly dictates that it also stands for geometry. It might do. The most prominent geometric metaphor utilised in early Freemasonry is the psychological and moral transition of a man through the rough ashlar to the perfect ashlar. The rough ashlar is an unhewn, imperfect, jagged stone hauled from the quarry, representing the newly initiated candidate in a raw state of ignorance, vice, and unrefined moral material. Through the rigorous application of Masonic education, self-discipline, and ethical living, symbolised allegorically by the repeated striking of the gavel and the guiding edge of the chisel, the Mason slowly chips away at his flaws and shapes his soul into the perfect ashlar. Crucially, in solid geometry, the perfect ashlar is defined as a flawless cube or a hexahedron, which is the second of the 5 Platonic solids. The cube represents absolute stability, earth, permanence, and moral uprightness. Because it possesses 6 equal square faces, it looks identical from all possible angles. This geometrically symbolises a man whose character and integrity do not shift or change depending on the perspective of the observer. So, the foundational goal of early Freemasonry is the literal realisation and manifestation of a pure Platonic ideal within the architecture of a human soul. The Royal Arch, the Triple Tau, and the Platonic Key. So, as Master Masons progress beyond the teachings of the Blue Lodge and into apparent bodies like the Holy Royal Arch, geometric symbolism becomes exponentially more abstract, esoteric, and complex. The Royal Arch degree ceremonies, the initiate is confronted with the symbol of the Triple Tau, a geometric figure representing 3 interlocking T's. Not cups of tea or towels or anything like that, but you could use that as a metaphor if you were quite poor at syntax and stuff. The Triple Tau, right, is a prominent feature on the Royal Arch's companion jewel. So Masonic lectures reveal a staggering piece of sacred geometry hidden within the jewel. The jewel incorporates the Seal of Solomon, 6-pointed hexagram composed of multiple intersecting triangles. When this two-dimensional hexagram is analysed using the specific angular key provided by the intersections of the Triple Tau, it mathematically unfolds to reveal 3-dimensional dimensions and internal angles of all 5 of the Platonic solids. During the symbolical lecture subsequent to the ceremony of exaltation, the companion Haggai, what the fuck that means, explicitly directs the candidate's attention to the physical models of the 5 regular Platonic bodies laid out upon the floor cloth of the chapter. The lecture explicitly details how these specific geometric forms represent everything, and it quotes, that God created, rigidly mapping the tetrahedron to fire, the octahedron to air, the cube to earth, and the icosahedron to water, with the complex dodecahedron encompassing the sphere of the universe. The best one, dodecahedron. Yes, for them. The presence of these solids within the ritual space forces the Masons to contemplate the sheer omnipotence and mathematical precision of the grand architecture of the universe. I don't believe in him, but I know him quite well. The ancient and accepted Scottish Rite geometry as theosophy, while the York Rite and Royal Arch utilised the Platonic solids to map the physical cosmos, the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, Art, elevates geometry into the realm of profound spiritual theosophy. The Scottish Rite, a highly elaborate system of 33 degrees that dramatically builds upon the basic ethical teachings of the Blue Lodge. It expands the Masons' worldview by delving incredibly deep into the comparative ancient religions, the chivalric codes of the Templars, Hermetic alchemy, Gnosticism, and the intricate mathematical mysticism of the Jewish Kabbalah. Unlike the highly operative physical stonemason focused allegories of the earlier degrees, the Scottish Rite operates primarily within the realm of speculative philosophy and macrocosmic geometry. Albert Pike, thought his name might come up, and morals and dogma. So the integration of profound philosophical geometry into the modern Scottish Rite is largely the work of Albert Pike, who was a brilliant 19th century Masonic scholar and the sovereign Grand Commander of the Southern, in his monumental 1871 masterwork, Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Pike extensively documented the esoteric meaning of the degrees. So Pike believed that true Masonic knowledge required piercing the superficial veil of literal interpretations to find the universal mathematical truths shared by all ancient wisdom traditions, from the Egyptians to the Kabbalists. For Pike, the manipulation of numbers, angles, and polyhedra was synonymous with magic, which he defined not as sorcery, but the highest science of the ancient magie that perfectly reconciled faith with pure reason. He viewed the geometric solids not as mere shapes, but as cognitive keys that could unlock the understanding of the moral and physical forces governing the universe. 28th degree, Night of the Sun and alchemical geometry, right? So that's fucking getting really 44 minutes in now. The Masonic ascends the Scottish Rite ladder. The geometric symbolism radically shifts from the microcosm of the self to the macrocosm of the universe. It's vividly apparent in the 28th degree, titled Knight of the Sun or Prince Adept. Adept is quite a nice word, I like that one as well. This specific degree abandons the allegories of King Solomon's temple entirely. Instead, the lodge room is painted to resemble the open wilderness of nature and is illuminated by a massive single central sun. The degree is deeply saturated with complex alchemical, hermetic, and Kabbalistic philosophy. The rituals and esoteric teachings emphasize the ultimate pursuit of truth through understanding nature's profound geometric and elemental structures. I'm not a Freemason, by the way. I just am not one at all. I don't want to be one either. Thank you for your offer. The Scottish Rite posits here that the rigorous alchemical transformation of the self is perfectly mirrored in the mathematical transformations of solid geometry, just as the alchemist seeks to transmute base, heavy lead into pure enlightened gold. The simplistic, sharp geometric forms, like my tooth and the tetrahedron, are expanded, truncated, and rectified into higher order polyhedra, like the Archimedean solids, directly reflecting a human mind slowly evolving from rigid dogmatic ignorance towards an expansive, multifaceted cosmic consciousness. The 32nd degree, the Camp diagram as geometric masterpiece. The absolute culmination of the Scottish Rite and educational system is the 32nd degree, titled The Sublime Prince of the Royal Secret. The overarching narrative arc of this degree concerns the dramatic gathering of a vast spiritual army of Masonic knights united by a common purpose to reconquer the Holy Land. Crucially, in the Scottish Rite, this Holy Land is allegorically understood not as the physical geography of the Middle East, but as a kind of internal, cognitive dominion of truth, reason, and spiritual enlightenment over the dark forces of ignorance, tyranny, and religious fanaticism. Someone I know posted a picture on Facebook the other day. Someone spray painted a bridge. They said, "You can't comply your way out of tyranny." Quite a good one. Really resonated with me. To organise and structure this massive spiritual army, the ritual introduces what's widely considered the most intricate, mathematically dense, and esoteric geometric symbol in the entire pantheon of Freemasonry, the Camp diagram, or the encampment. So, the nested geometry of the encampment. The Camp diagram is presented to the candidate as a complex two-dimensional geometric floor cloth, tracing board, or relief table. It serves as a top-down architectural projection of a highly advanced multi-dimensional polyhedral concept. The diagram is meticulously composed of a series of nested concentric geometric polygons moving from a highly multifaceted exterior perimeter inward towards a singular unified dividing centre. So the geometric architecture of the camp is mathematically defined as followed. One of them is the nonagon, or Enneagon, the outermost physical perimeter of the military camp is a massive nine-sided polygon. This nine-sided shape forms the primary defensive line of the army. The 9 distinct geometric sectors serve as the encampment for the Masons, holding the 1st through the 18th degree of the Rite, the Blue Lodge, the Lodge of Perfection, and the Rose Croix chapters. The nonagon holds a numerical equivalent of 9, a highly revered number in sacred geometry, representing the square of perfect divine number 3, 9, symbolising an expansive, unbreakable perimeter of unity and combat preparedness. So the heptagon, moving inward from the outer defences, the next geometric boundary is a 7-sided polygon. This heptagon serves as a transitional line of communication where reports and intelligence are exchanged between the outer and inner defensive lines, and its numerical equivalent is number 7. The pentagon, crucial inner defensive line, is a 5-sided polygon. 5 sectors of the pentagon house the elite higher echelons of the Rite, serving as the camp of the Masons for the Masons of the 19th through the 32nd degrees, the councils of Kadosh and Consistory. Its numerical equivalent is 5. The equilateral triangle, if you're still with me, keep going, nested tightly inside the protective walls of the pentagon, is a perfect 3-sided figure. Wait there. Alright, yeah, so the equilateral triangle is universally recognised in esotericism as the ultimate emblem of divine trinity, equilibrium, and the spiritual apex of creation. Its numerical equivalent is 3. Number 5, the circle and the point enclosed entirely within the boundaries of the triangle is a perfect circle, the ancient symbol representing infinity, the cosmos, and eternity. The circle is intersected by the arms of a St Andrew's cross. At the exact mathematical centre of the intersection lies a single dimensionless point. From this central point, the unseen Supreme Commander, representing divine will, the Sovereign Grand Commander, and the 33rd degree Inspector General Masons exercise absolute command and radiate light outward to the entire encampment. Its numerical equivalent is 1. 0121 do 1. When a Mason calculates the numerical values assigned to these geometric figures from the centre outwards, 1 point, triangle, pentagon, heptagon and nontagon, sum total is exactly whatever. This mathematical sum is not arbitrary. It's a direct historical nod identifying the degree's origins in older French rite of perfection, where the sublime prince of the royal secret historically served as the 25th and final ultimate degree before the system was mathematically expanded to America to 33 degrees. The convergence of Platonic elements and camp banners. So the true staggering genius of the Scottish Rite's geometric symbolism becomes apparent when one analyses the specific flags and banners stationed precisely at the vertices, that's the corners, of the camp's concentric polygons. These banners directly encode the classical elements represented by the 5 Platonic solids, creating a breathtaking synthesis between ancient Platonic philosophy, Hebrew mysticism and Masonic chivalry. So the 5 vertices of the inner pentagon feature heavily guarded banners bearing the letters Tenju, forming an anagrammatic sacred word, Tenju. More importantly, four of these 5 banners predominantly display standard emblematic beasts derived directly from prophetic apocalyptic visions found in the book of Ezekiel and the book of Revelation. The esoteric alchemical mapping of these 4 beasts responds precisely to the elements of the Platonic solids. So the banner of the lion corresponds to the element of fire, mathematically mapped to the Platonic tetrahedron. The banner of the eagle corresponds to the element of air, mathematically mapped to the Platonic octahedron. The banner of the ox corresponds to the element of the earth, mathematically mapped to the Platonic cube or hexahedron. The banner of the winged hart, traditionally represented as a man or an angel, corresponds to the element of water, mathematically mapped to the Platonic isohedron. And then you get me. The 5th and final banner on the pentagon displays the Ark of the Covenant, representing the divine presence, the Holy Spirit, or the overarching ether, mathematically mapped to the Platonic dodecahedron, which Plato stated was used to arrange the constellations of the whole of heaven. Big up my bad self. Thus, the most sacred inner sanctum of the Scottish Rite encampment is structurally and philosophically anchored by a symbolic equivalent of the 5 Platonic solids. They provide the elemental stability required to support the massive army surrounding them. Moving outwards, the massive external perimeter, the nonagon, features all 9 tents and banners bearing the letters of Salix and Nonis. The Scottish Rite ritual hints to the initiate that these letters, when combined with Tenju, form the pentagon, form the complex anagram for the Latin Gnostic phrase lux inens nos agit. I don't know what that means, but it's going to tell me the light within compels us. Yeah, that's right. This signifies that the outer multifaceted geometries of the nonagon are driven and animated entirely by the pure singular point of the divine light radiating from the centre. Just like this fucking thing you can probably see in reflection in my glasses. Like a round light. The Royal Secret Vector Equilibrium. There we go. I knew it was coming up somewhere. And the Archimedean Society. So to view the 32nd degree camp diagram purely as a flat 2-dimensional drawing on a piece of paper or a floor cloth is to entirely miss the fundamental overarching lesson of Masonic geometry. So advanced esoteric analysis suggests that the camp diagram is actually a flattened 2-dimensional architectural projection of a highly complex 3-dimensional polyhedral structure. Just as the Archimedean solids are physically created by symmetrically truncating sharp vertices of Platonic solids, creating multiple differing polygon faces that interlock perfectly to form a harmonious spherical whole, the Scottish Rite itself is structurally engineered as a philosophical Archimedean solid. The Rite takes the pure, rigid, monolithic ethical lessons of the Blue Lodge, symbolised by the Platonic cube or the perfect Ashtar, and geometrically truncates them. It expands the Masonic philosophy by slicing away rigid dogma to reveal dozens of new complex facets. The Rosicrucian facet, the Kabbalistic facet, the chivalric facet and the philosophical facet, and of course the alchemical one too. When the Masons of the 32nd degree assemble in their respective polygonal camps, the 18 degrees of the nonagon, 14 degrees of the pentagon, and the triad of the centre, they are literally enacting the vertices of a massive, living societal polyhedron. The ultimate royal secret revealed to the Sublime Prince in the 32nd degree is, drumroll please, the grand law of equilibrium. Shit film, bit like The Matrix, good choreography, bad script, nothing to do with it. Based balance between opposing forces of the universe. It's the mastery of the dynamic tensegrity based. Don't Google tensegrity, they'll come to your house and hypnotise your dad. So the tensegrity based balance between opposing forces in the universe, the spiritual and the material, the divine and the human, absolute authority or absolute liberty, reason and faith. This concept is perfect. Omnidirectional equilibrium is flawlessly mirrored in the specific geometry of the Archimedean solid known as the cube octahedron. In the mid-20th century, the visionary architect and geometrician Buckminster Fuller renamed the cube octahedron as the vector equilibrium. He proved that it is the only geometric solid in existence. The energetic forces radiating from the absolute volumetric centre to the outer vertices are exactly equal in length and strength to the edges forming the outer perimeter. So it represents the ultimate omnidirectional balance of energy in the physical universe. I did ask you for some pictures for this, but it's fucking set me off. The Scottish Rite camp, with its perfectly balanced geometric rings of authority radiating from a central commander out to a multifaceted, diverse army on the perimeter, is the exact socio-political manifestation of this Archimedean geometric principle. The initiate learns that true spiritual power and moral perfection do not lie in isolated, static shapes, but in a dynamic, interlocking community of diverse, multifaceted individuals, perfectly balanced around a singular divine centre. Second and third order insights, so the cognitive mechanics of geometry, by deeply synthesizing the strict mathematical parameters of regular and semi-regular solids with the allegorical initiatory framework of Freemasonry, several profound third order insights regarding human cognition, psychological evolution and optimal societal design. Can't even say societal, that's how institutionalized I am. Been here for like a year and 7 months now. Optimal societal design emerged from the data. Leave me alone notifications. Geometry as an epistemological ladder of consciousness. So the mathematical progression from Platonic to Archimedean solids serves as a direct structural analogue for the expansion of human consciousness and cognitive capacity. The 5 Platonic solids represent fundamental absolute truths or axioms. They are mathematically pure, simple, elegant and unyielding. However, because they only allow for one type of face, absolute Platonic truth is often too rigid, sharp and inflexible to perfectly map onto the complex, messy and pluralistic reality of human existence. A mind struck in a purely Platonic state is dogmatic. It only sees the world through one repeating shape. To make a Platonic ideal highly functional and applicable in a dynamic environment, it must undergo the geometric operation of truncation. Its sharp, aggressive corners must be smoothed out, and entirely new, different faces, perspectives must be integrated into its surface. This geometric operation perfectly models the cognitive processes of developing nuance. So when a human being learns to synthesize competing philosophies, for example, integrating the rigid square of logic and science with the fluid triangle of spirituality and intuition, they evolve from a rigid Platonic state into a highly adaptable, complex Archimedean state. The Archimedean solid, with its multiple face types harmoniously coexisting around identical vertices, symbolizes a highly pluralistic. I've got no cold coffee left even. I wet my palate with highly pluralistic, enlightened mind capable of holding paradoxical opposing ideas in perfect equilibrium without collapsing into cognitive dissonance. Well, there they are. The blueprint of a harmonious Archimedean society. Furthermore, the Masonic translation of these geometries extends far beyond the psychology of the individual to provide a literal architectural blueprint for a utopian society. In the Scottish Rite's 32nd degree camp diagram, varying degrees of Masonic knowledge from the first all the way to the 32nd are not viewed in strictly vertical hierarchical ladder where the bottom is the discarded once the top is reached. Instead, all the degrees are placed simultaneously on a geometric perimeter of the camp, manning the walls of the polygons together. This structure implies a profoundly Archimedean worldview. If one looks at a soccer ball, truncated icosahedron, it's physically impossible for the hexagons to enclose a spherical space without the structural presence of the pentagons. Both shapes, though completely different in their properties and angles, are equally necessary and codependent to maintain the integrity of the sphere. Similarly, the Scottish Rite camp diagram teaches that a functional, enlightened and peaceful society requires the coexistence of highly diverse individuals operating at a completely different functional capacity, traits and the levels of understanding represented by the different polygon faces. However, the diversity only survives if all the individuals are structurally united by a shared, identical centre of universal morality, brotherly love, represented by the mathematical law of vertex transitivity. Two T's in there, three T's. Therefore, I'm going to have my tea in a minute. I'd miss Millie's at about 3 o'clock. So there's the ultimate lesson for the Sublime Prince is the human society must be engineered exactly like an Archimedean solid. Like, it must actively embrace that vast diversity of its constituent parts, the faces, while ensuring that the structural forces, rights and ethical laws distributed across the population, the vertices, if you like, remain entirely equitable, identical and symmetric. So in conclusion, almost there, over an hour now, 101. Conclusion: the profound intersection of solid geometry and esoteric Freemasonry reveals a highly complex, continuous dialogue between the physical, measurable dimensions of Euclidean space and the intangible spiritual dimensions of the human soul. Madness. The Platonic solids, defined by their unyielding regularity, perfect symmetry and ancient elemental associations, represent a pure archetypal building block of reality. They are foundational absolute truths of earth, air, fire, water and the divine, that's me, ether, serving as the raw, unhewn material of both the cosmos and the moral character of the individual. The Archimedean solids, born through the sophisticated geometric operations of expansion, rectification and truncation of those Platonic ideals, introduce necessary complexity, multiplicity and advanced structural harmony. They serve as a powerful mathematical proven metaphor for cognitive adaptability, social pluralism and universal equilibrium. Within the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, these geometric principles completely transcend the realm of mathematics to become the living architecture of morality. From the unhewn rough ashlar seeking the perfection of the Platonic cube in the Blue Lodge to the staggering multidimensional complexity of the 32nd degree camp diagram, the Rite utilises the language of vertices, intersecting angles and concentric polygons to map the spiritual journey of humanity. The elemental prophetic beasts guarding the pentagonal core of the encampment echo humanity's ancient reverence for the 5 regular polyhedra, while the expansive, multifaceted perimeter models an Archimedean society bound by universal brotherhood and enlightened reason. Ultimately, the exhaustive study of these magnificent perfect solids reveals the true royal secret concealed within the 32nd degree, that whether one is observing a microscopic atomic packing of a crystal lattice, the stitched leather polygons of a sphere, or the philosophical structure of a perfectly enlightened mind, the universe is governed by an exquisite geometric equilibrium. Through the deep contemplation of the Platonic and Archimedean solids, the stonemason, the theoretical mathematician, and the Scottish Rite initiate all stare into the exact same profound symmetry, witnessing the precise, flawless, mathematical poetry by which the great architect sustains the cosmos. Thank you very much for watching. Try the veal. I'm here all week. Cheers.